Hey guys, I'm gonna be talking about the problem with horror movies today and how they're unoriginal. They recently came out with a spin-off to The Conjuring, which The Conjuring was a good movie, but the Annabelle was a piece of shit. Filmmakers should come up with an original idea instead of a remake, like Nightmare on Elm Street. That movie, the remake to it sucked. The original was good because it was original for its time. Because usually when they do remakes, usually people like me think that they've seen it all, so there's really no point into doing a remake. And I heard there was an Evil Dead remake, which I have not yet seen, but I heard it's a good remake. Maybe they came up with did it a bit differently to make it seem sort of original and unique. And there are remakes like The Ring. This movie was a remake from an older film that was made not too long ago before this one, but I heard that the original was a bit better, but this movie was good. So remakes like those can be more effective than remakes like A Nightmare on Elm Street that are pretty much the same exact thing from the original. And there are movies like Ouija that aren't good movies, horror movies. There are quite a few of them recently, like Annabelle, Ouija, Devil's Due, and you'd rarely have a good horror movie they'd come up with. There are movies like Sinister that are good movies. Movies like Insidious, movies like Oculus, those movies were good movies. Lately, there has been movies like The Ring 2, which was a bad sequel from the good film The Ring. This movie could have been better if they did it right, like The Ring, just made it a bit different from The Ring to make it unique. But this movie was pretty bad. It wasn't as scary as the original, it was hardly scary at all. And to me, they're rushing through to make movies just to get money in the box office, and for people who are fans of the first movie just to go see this film. Filmmakers should be more original, like movies like Friday the 13th. I really enjoyed this film a lot. It's a great horror film for the early 80s. That was an original idea. It wasn't really under like a huge budget. It was you don't really need millions and millions of dollars to make a good movie like Friday the 13th. This movie was shot in like a couple days. In movies like Oculus, this is a psychological thriller. This movie was done right. They took their time with it. They didn't rush through making the movie. It was shot in like days, even though that's pretty quick, but still they did it right. And it's unlike movies like Devil's Due where they just have cheap found footage crap just because that's the cheapest way to make a horror film. And there are movies like Deliver Us from Evil. This movie was pretty damn generic. It sort of got mixed reviews, but at least it was decent and they took their time with it to make it a creepy-ass film. There are movies like Halloween. This movie I liked a whole lot. It's a classic. I really enjoyed this film. It's original. It was made right. Like, this is one of my all-time favorite horror films from the 70s. And 70s were considered the golden year for horror films. And there are movies like the Halloween remake, which not too many people liked, but I enjoyed this film for what it was. It was a Rob Zombie film, but at least they took their time into making it scary. Even though it's nowhere near as good as the original Halloween, at least it was done sort of well. But especially Halloween, for its time of 2014, there were movies that came around like Ouija. I think they did it since to make it PG-13, so teenagers would go to the box office, waste their money on that crappy film just so the studios can make $5 million in the opening weekend. But when Ouija came out, I was smart and I didn't waste my time with that movie. I saw it after it came out to do a review on it, to pretty much warn you guys that that movie was shit. There are movies like The Exorcist, which I have not yet seen, but I first want to read the book so I can do a review on the movie and the book, of course. But this movie, I heard it was original. I heard it's the scariest film of all time. And I heard it took them a long time to make this film, to make it an effective film. Now, I want to talk about the Blair Witch Project. This film was made right. The acting was decent in this film. Unlike Devil's Due, it was shaky cam stuff. This movie didn't have that. This is what made this a good film. It had a creepy atmosphere, unlike Devil's Due. Devil's Due wasn't scary. This movie was a whole lot better of a film. And this movie, The Blair Witch Project, was the first well-known found-footage horror film. This movie was done right. The only reason Devil's Due was a found-footage horror film was because that was the cheapest way possible to make that film. But this movie, they did it for a good purpose. They did it to make it seem real and have a creepy atmosphere. So that's pretty much the problem with found footage horror films in 2014 from back in 1999. Movies like Ouija, those movies sucked. They were boring, they weren't scary, and that goes with Annabelle. That movie could have been better if they did it like how they did with The Conjuring. The only good part in the film Annabelle was the elevator scene where the person was in the elevator and it took place mainly in the basement. That part was creepy. If the whole movie could have been like that, like having a creepy atmosphere just as scary as that, the movie could have been a whole lot better. There are movies like Saw. Saw was suspenseful, well made, and really good. Best Saw movie. None of the sequels can compare to this film. Even though there were some people complaining about this film, saying it's too violent or disgusting, at least it was suspenseful and it was creepy to it, like not knowing who the killer was throughout the movie, finding out how to get out of the room, and that part, this is what made Saw a good horror film. Poltergeist, this was a good horror movie from 1982, and they did a remake from 2015, which was nowhere near as good as this film, but at least it was sorta decent in a way. At least the remake had some creepy atmosphere parts, like creepy jump scares in the film. Even though not many people like myself like them, at least there were creepy parts in the film, unlike Ouija, which wasn't scary at all. Devil's Due was a bit better than Ouija, but still it was a piece of crap. So I think filmmakers should take their time with this, like making horror movies, because they're not really all that good lately. So that's it. Bye for now.